Welcome back to our AWS AI Practitioner Learning Series. In the previous episode, we learned how AI works end-to-end from the data collections or data preparation and training the model, evaluating the performance and deploying the solutions and generating the predictions, right? But an important question still remains: how does a machine actually learn? Do we teach it using the examples, or do we let it discover patterns on its own, or do we reward it when it makes good decisions or good predictions? The answer is all three, and that's exactly what we are going to explore in today's video. By the end of this session, you will understand the three major types of machine learning that power modern AI system. So machine learning can be broadly divided into three categories. The first, supervised learning, where the machine learns from the examples with correct answers. And second one is unsupervised learning, where the machine discovers patterns without being given answers. The third one is reinforcement learning, where the machine learns through rewards and penalties. Let's explore each one in details. What is machine learning? So before diving into the different learning methods, let's quickly understand what machine learning actually. So machine learning is a branch of artificial intelligence that enables computer to learn patterns from the data, right? So and makes decisions without being exactly programmed. Traditionally, the software engineers used to write rules. If this happens, do that. If that happens, do this. But in the machine learning, instead of writing thousands of rules and code, we provide the data, allow the machine to learn the rules or the data from its own. So the way the machine learns those rules determine which type of machine learning is being used. That's very important. So let's begin the most common type of machine learning techniques. So the supervised learning. Think of its learning with a teacher, right? Student receive a question and the correct answers. Over the time, the student learns the patterns and can answer new questions independently. Machine learning works the same way. The machine receives the inputs along with the correct answers, and by analyzing thousands of examples, it learns the relationship between them. That's why it's called supervised learning. The machine is basically supervised by known answers, right? So now let's take the one example, right? Let's take the example. So suppose we want to predict house price. So the machine receives the information such as house size, number of bedrooms, and locations. Along with the informations, we provide the actual house prices. The machine studied thousands of such examples. Over the time, it learns how different factors influence the prices. Then the brand new house, when you give the estimations, when you give the predictions for the brand new house presented, the model can estimate its price even though it has never seen that house before. How it is possible? Because it's understand the relationship between the older patterns. So this is one of the most common examples of supervised learning. Now let's get into the next one more example, right? So email, the spam detections, where usually we are seeing a lot of this used day to day, right? So in the Gmail or your office accounts, whatever. So look at its real world applications, right? So email spam detections. So it inputs the email contents. For example, the email contents, how it looks like. Example, we have given this one. So the congratulations, you won the 1 million lottery. That means we are giving the patterns like, okay, this is the not a spam. So the machine is trained thousands of email that are already labeled. So which is spam or not spam. By learning the patterns such as suspicious keywords, unusual links, or promotional languages, it can automatically classify new email. That's why Gmail can move spam emails to your spam folder without you doing anything. So that's where. So let's take one more example, the fraud detection systems, right? So the bank used machine learning so extensively for fraud detections, because the input is the transaction data, the output is whether the transaction is legitimate or fraudulent. The model learn from the historical transactions, so the record identifies suspicious behavior. For example, unexpected locations, unusual spend patterns, and a very large purchases. This helps banker to detect whether it is a fraud or in the real time, basically. So that's how we can identify the fraudulent transactions. Like now one another the good example, right? Medical diagnosis systems, where we usually see this day to day. So healthcare is another big area, right? So where supervised learning creates tremendous the values. The input, we are whatever the input, we include the patient's information, such as per this example, the symptoms and the medical history, the laboratory reports, and the imaging data, meaning the x-rays and all. The output is the disease predictions. So by learning from the thousands of these kinds of the medical records, now the model can assist to the doctors in making a faster and the most accurate diagnosis and diseases with the diagnosis decisions. So that's where. So now this is the medical the diagnosis reports is one of the good example, right? Now let's dive into the supervised. One more the key idea is about the supervised learning. So the key thing is to remember in the supervised learning uses label data. In the other words, like input, we are giving the inputs plus correct answers. We are giving the answers. The machine learning by comparing its predictions with the known results and continuously improving its accuracy. So it is predicting the patterns with the known results. That's where a supervised learning. Wherever you see known answers during the training, think supervised learning. And now next one is the unsupervised. Next type is the unsupervised learning. So now let's remove the answers. In the supervised learning, if you remove the answers completely, that's become unsupervised learning, right? Imagine giving the machine only the data. We are only giving the inputs, but no label or no correct answers, and there is no teacher. Earlier we say that okay, there is a teacher which gives the right answers, but now we are not giving the right answers. That's where the machine's job is to explore the data. Now it will discover the patterns its own way, because it does not know that whether it is right or not. There is no such data pattern to identify that. So now it will discover its own way. That is called the unsupervised learning. So instead of predicting the answers, so the machine tries to understand the structure of the data itself. Now, based on the structure of the data, based on the understanding, it will predict the results. So now let's take one example, the customer segmentations example, right? So let's look at this business example especially. So suppose a company has millions of customers. The company wants to understand the customer behavior. So we usually see day to day many e-commerce sites and wherever you see. So this is a pattern how they will identify. Instead of manually reviewing every customer, the machine analyze the purchases pattern automatically. So eventually it meaning, so for example, discover how the customers are purchasing and whether they are purchasing with the high-end products or with the offers, such kind of patterns. So it discovers the group of the people, it will make the group. So for example, maybe frequent buyers, discount shoppers, right, or premium customers. So it will notice everything. So based on the patterns. So nobody will told the machine these categories, right? It discovered themselves. So that's the power of unsupervised learning, and it will make the patterns and the groups. So now let's take into one more example, right? Unsupervised learning is used everywhere. Basically, customer segmentation helps market team to create target companies, right? Product recommendation system finds users with the similar interest recommended patterns. Especially we see this whenever you are buying something else in the end of the shopping cart, it will says that, or else it will says that, okay, most of the buyers, when you are adding to the products to the cart, right, most of the buyers who bought this item also bought this item. So that's where it will give the many examples, right? So that's where it identify the patterns who are buying these items, and buying the milk, they will buy the bread, such kind of the suggestions, right? So market based analysis, this is called, discover the products that are frequently purchased together, right? For example, customer who buys the bread often buy the milk. That's why I told. So these insights help business increase the sales, improve the customer experience. Now let's get into the key idea about this. So here is the key idea. Unsupervised learning finds the hidden patterns in the unlabeled data. No answers, no labels. The machine discovers the relationships and structures on its own. Whenever you hear the phrase discover patterns, think unsupervised learning. Now, so next one is the reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning, this is the next type 3. So let's move to the third approach, how we are going to learn this one. So imagine teaching a dog new trick. So when a dog pattern correctly performs the correct action, it receives the reward, right? When it is performed incorrect, it receives no rewards, meaning over time the dog learns which actions produce best outcomes. So reinforcement learning follows exactly the same principle, meaning if it is correct, then it receives the reward. Based on the rewards, it will identify, it will overcome, it will make it better every day. So how it works usually, the process is surprisingly simple, very simple. So the AI agent takes an action, the environment provides feedback, and the agent receives rewards and penalties. So then it learns from that feedback and improves the future decisions. Like, so for example, there are many things. The cycle repeats 1,000. This cycle same repeats the thousands. It will get the feedback and it will improve the decisions, right? So it's a reward and penalties. That's where. So now let's take one real-time example: self-driving cars, right? We usually see. So one of the most famous example of reinforcement learning is self-driving cars. The car learns how to stay in the line, like avoid obstacles or follow the traffic signals, or correct decisions receive positive rewards. Incorrect decisions receive penalties. Over the time, this system becomes better and safer at driving because it's over time. It will learn from the rewards and the penalties. That's where. So now let's take another example. Reinforcement learning is also widely used in industrial robotics or game playing AI, such as the chess and Go, and autonomous drones and navigation system, right? So wherever an AI system must learn through trial and errors, reinforcement learning is often involved. So there are many applications, many examples you can take reinforcement learning. So now let's compare with so as we discuss the three of them, right? Now let's compare with the three models. So supervised learning, three types: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. So supervised learning uses answers and focuses on prediction. Unsupervised learning uses nuances and the focuses on discovering the patterns, and reinforcement learning uses rewards and penalties to learn the best actions, right? Different problems requires different learning approaches. Now let's dive into the how it is with respect to the AWS perspective, right? From the AWS perspective, these concepts are extremely important. When working with the AWS Amazon SageMaker, you will frequently build models using the supervised and unsupervised learning. If you move towards the robotic or autonomous systems and the advanced AI applications, or reinforcement learning becomes it's increasing important, right? So understanding these three learning approaches is fundamental of both AWS certification candidates and the AI practitioners, right? And what are the key takeaways? Let's quickly summarize today's lesson. Machine learning enables system to learn from the data. Supervised learning uses labeled data. Unsupervised learning discovers hidden patterns, and reinforcement learning learns through the rewards and penalties. Different business problems, different business problems requires different learning approaches, right? And most modern AI systems are one or more of these learning methods. That's right. So now comes to the end. Today we learned three major type of machine learnings. One is the supervised learning and unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning. These concepts from the foundation of the modern artificial system, right? In the next episode, we are going to learn about the regression, classification, and clustering. So these three most important machine learning techniques used in the real world. So if you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to continue your AWS AI practitioner journey. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Thank you.